Hey everyone, and welcome to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and we are going to talk about Mindhunter Season 2, Episode 5. Full spoilers for the episode, of course, as always. And this is finally the Manson episode. May not be the last one. I don't know if he comes back. It feels like there's open.
It feels like there's going to be more. I don't think it was personal enough this time.
Sure, I can see that. I see that. It got a little bit personal for Bill, of course. He got very
Yeah.
defensive. And there was multiple conversations with Bill in this episode where they're discussing Manson, convincing people to kill for him and stuff, and talking about how they're still culpable. And he's like, nah, they were children and they were forced. And it's clear that obviously his home issues right now are bleeding into his thought process, and he's almost trying to convince himself that he shouldn't be blaming his son for what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, that stuff's very on the surface. It's very clear to see. The episode starts, of course, with BTK burying a lockbox full of souvenirs from his kills, and I think it's become very clear now. This is the third or fourth scene we've had with him, that his story this season seems to very much be him trying to get away from killing people. He's trying to leave it behind, mostly inspired seemingly by his wife catching him in the act.
I mean,
In episode one.
even in that point, it was him just doing it to himself. It was more.
Yeah.
I think that was a coping mechanism in itself. Of hey, if I do it to me, maybe I don't need to do it to other people.
Yeah, very possible. I think him being caught by the wife though kind of triggered this thing where he's really desperate to prove that he's away from it
Yeah,
now. Partly to himself, but partly just so that he won't be caught. This is the last thing she'll ever see that's suspicious. I can't have anything else.
yeah,
But obviously
definitely.
he's at the library drawing, people who are tied up and killed, and he's burying his souvenirs. And this makes a lot of sense just in the timeline, because obviously BTK did have long breaks between some of his kills, and you know big period of time had passed between them. In fact, one of my favorite lines of this episode, and maybe my favorite line of the whole show thus far, actually, is when they see Kemper, and Kemper points out, "It seems like you've gotten all your information from the ones who have been caught." And I was like, "That's a very good point."
Yeah, I forgot what Kemper was like. Not entirely, but just
Yeah.
how articulate he can be with things like that.
Because that is a fantastic, because they keep saying, "Oh no, we catch them. They always have this background." It's like, yeah,
Yeah,
the ones you catch always have this background, but the
yeah,
ones who are hiding in plain sight, the ones who are in normal relationships and have jobs and houses and
they're
seem
the
like they're
ones
normal
getting away
people,
with it.
yeah, at least for now. Obviously,
Yeah,
the fact that BTK does eventually get caught decades later implies that eventually we suss them out. Sometimes,
yeah.
not always,
Yeah,
but
but not always.
yeah.
That's the truth of it.
So yeah, so little tidbit there, and then Bill. I mean, we'll start with Bill. I think his home life and the everything with his son is obviously very interesting. I love the scene because they're told, of course, um, early on in the episode at a meeting with the prosecutor, I want to say, or someone to that effect, who's like, "Oh, we're not pressing charges because of his age and because he didn't actually, act in the crime himself, but obviously he's going to be, getting treatment. He's going to talk to someone. There's going to be someone from social services. We're going to,
Yeah, because I'd forgotten he was adopted.
okay, mm,
Again, I maybe that was in the recap at some point, or I've just missed it. But I didn't remember. Uh, so when that was brought up, I was like, oh, that's why they're so worried about him being taken away.
mm, mm. Um, and the wife gets very upset. Nancy gets very upset about, why didn't you say anything else, Bill? Why didn't you stick up for him? And Bill can see how this is working because it's the sort of thing he does. And I love the scene where the social services lady comes by the house and looks through the house and is checking where, that's where the razor
It
blade
just
is.
cuts to a
Yeah.
different room, and it's just the two of them stood in the doorway watching her
Yeah.
every time.
And I loved his observation where he's like, "That's what we do. We comb the crime scene." Like, he
Yeah,
understood exactly what she was doing, and he understands the process of what's happening. And I think from his perspective, he understands how they have to rule out that he's dangerous, so he wants that to happen, and he's trying to keep his cool. Whereas Nancy is getting very emotional and freaking out and feeling accused and feeling like they're judging her constantly.
very defensive of her son.
Yeah. Which makes sense. It makes complete sense that she feels that way. Bill, of course, has this 1 foot in either world. Essentially, he's both the father
Yeah,
and he's someone who does what he does.
yeah. Like, he's obviously concerned that maybe he is going down that route. He doesn't know for sure. Uh, Nancy's trying to defend, make excuses. Like, oh, the cross was because he's been going to church. He was trying to, thinking that would bring him back to life. Feels like a reach to me. personally.
Yeah, I'm not so sure I buy that completely. Um, we do hear more of the case because when he tells Wendy later, we do hear a bit more casually about what happened. It's like the older boys suffocated the toddler.
Yeah.
It doesn't necessarily sound like it was intentional, and it didn't sound like they were trying to murder the kid.
No, no.
Um, which I actually kind of like because it makes you feel less like, because I think one of the fears that I had when this was all first brought up, that there was a body found, was that, oh, I mean, it's not a super coincidence, a serial killer, but it's like,
But it's
oh
just a little convenient.
yeah, there's a serial killer in his life as well. I'm like, oh no, I'm glad that it's not. I'm glad that it looked like it might be that for a second, but it's really just this one accident that happened. There's no indication,
Yeah.
at least right now, that these kids have been murdering anyone else or.
No, it is now down to, okay, why did he suggest the cross? Was it, as she suggests, oh, he thought it might help, or was it, he's seen some stuff in his dad's work?
Yeah, and as the guy points out as well, like the problem here is, he had days to come clean, to talk to his parents about what happened and try to get help or whatever, but he didn't. He either doesn't understand that what he did was really wrong, or was trying to just not be caught, and both are concerning in different ways. So
Yeah.
so delving into that stuff's really interesting, and we see very little of the kid. We really don't see a whole lot of him. It's mainly through the parents and
Yeah.
their concerns with him. And the social services lady does notice, of course. I can't remember what her name was, but it was Ms. She made a point of pointing out it was Ms., not Miss.
Yeah.
But she notices that Bill, when he goes to like pat him in the head, he kind of doesn't he kind of just drifts from him and doesn't let him do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, does he not? And because that was a big thing in season 1, that he wouldn't get a hug out of him, that the kid was very standoffish with him. And it was kind of the start, the cogs turning in Bill's head, that he was antisocial and there is something maybe wrong with him. And this fear brought on by the Manson stuff, this idea that Manson took 4 or 5 upstanding young people who came from good homes, good families, and turned
Yeah.
them into killers. He really wants to believe that they were turned into this, but of course a lot of this episode suggests that they already had something inside them, and Manson just unlocked the door. He just made it easier for them to do it.
Absolutely. And we should mention, the care worker. She asks, "Oh, the school he goes to, does it have a special needs department?" And they're like, well, "No, but we never even considered that it was, a thing that we needed to be aware of." But the fact that she's questioning it means that she's considering, well, maybe there is something there.
Yeah. So no, all this stuff with because it kind of goes into why I like Halloween so much. Some of this stuff.
Okay, yeah,
Halloween, of course, one of the things I like about that movie, the original Halloween, Michael Myers, The Shape, is the idea that there's no reason for him to be this way. He has the normal family, he has the white picket fence, he's living the American dream, but for some reason he's just evil. And of course, obviously, we're talking about criminal psychology. We're talking about trying to understand why people do the things they do and why they are the way they are. But it leads into this idea here where Bill needs to see a reason for why these people are the way they are. He can't accept that possibly some people just are this way. And that doesn't necessarily mean that we can't look at it from a scientific perspective. Of course, in the real world, we then talk about, well, are they born with thinking this way, or is it a mental issue from birth kind of thing, as opposed to something that's obviously, some killers are created through their life. Obviously, that happens too, but it's this idea that some people might just be that dangerous deep down, and nothing was ever going to stop them from being that.
Yeah.
Is an interest. It's a scary idea, and obviously Bill, wrestling this with his own son is terrifying him. So that's kind of the fear he's dealing with, and it made me think a little bit why I like Halloween. It's because there's no answer. It's because he's just this mystery. That's what makes him scary.
I can get that.
So yeah, they're getting Manson. They're also invited to a party. Gunn invites them to a party, and but they get Manson and they go to California to go see him.
After Greg gets kicked out of the room as well.
Oh yeah, can I speak to these three? And Greg gets shifted out the room. That's quite right.
Yeah.
Also, notable to mention that all of them think Wendy's story was made up about her relationship.
Yeah. I don't know if that was like Greg had kind of dropped that at some point, and then they just kind of went, "Oh, okay then," or if they all came to that conclusion independently.
So to go see Manson. Manson's been a bit of a diva. He's refusing to come out of his cell. So it's like, hey, it was Kemper, and I like that one because I didn't remember what prison Kemper was at. I wasn't going to remember that from last season.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, is Kemper available? I was like, oh, we should talk to him. Maybe he'll give us some insight. Maybe about BTK since we're hunting him right now.
Yeah, it's like, well, we've got to ask him again at some point. So, yeah, why not? Well, we're here. And Bill's like, well, are you sure? Last time you saw Kemper, didn't go so well for you.
And of course, Kemper brings it up. He's like, oh, that really meant a lot to me. But that's what friends are for, right? So, and Holden just kind of nods. He can't even bring himself to say it. He's like,
Yeah, because they're in like the chapel, aren't they?
yeah, the prison chapel. Because
Yeah.
he wants to write his book because he asked for a typewriter by the end, and they said they'll see what they can do. Obviously, he's very civil with them. Kemper's been one of the
Always has
friendliest
been, yeah.
of the serial killers. And outside of that big line that I really loved was like, hey, all the ones you've spoken to are the ones who got caught. Like all the really good ones who are good at this, you haven't spoken to yet.
But I think that's why Kemper's so interesting, because as Holden points out just after, if he hadn't turned himself in, he probably would never have been caught.
Yeah, he kind of did it for himself, and that was a big thing in the interviews last season. So
Yeah,
so he has a bit more of an insight into that than maybe anyone
some
else
of the
does.
others, yeah. So he's probably the closest subject to a lot of them.
Yeah, and he's the one that says you should talk to Tex, one of the actual killers from the Manson family.
Yeah.
He'll have maybe more insight and be more honest because Manson's a bit of a talker, but he says a whole lot of nonsense essentially, as we see when we get to meet Manson. And of course,
Yes,
he specifically warns them not to stare or mention his height because he's self conscious about how short he is.
Yeah.
Because he's like 5'4" or whatever he is. I don't know what height Manson is, but small and average. And
Yeah.
he comes in to their main room and they're waiting. And I like how Holden stands up slowly, like he's out of respect, but Bill just sits there. He's not getting up.
Bill's
And
not having any of it.
Manson goes on and on and on, and there's a lot of talk about how he didn't actually order anyone to kill anyone. He just, they're my children, and I set them free. And once they do what they do, that's on them, man. He is straight up hippie cult leader bullshit the whole time.
But then he's claiming that Helter Skelter was nothing. Media made it up. All his whole race war ideology. That wasn't him.
Yeah, and he does actually. There's some interesting things he says, which then bleeds into the interview with Tex, which Holden does alone because Bill has to race back for this meeting with the psychologist or the therapist or whatever. And what was interesting is that the therapist, when he hears because he's like, oh, why were you late today? And he's like, oh, because I had to get a red eye from California. I was interviewing someone. He's like, oh, you were interviewing a serial killer. Who are you interviewing? Charles Manson. Like,
and he's like, piss off.
Do you know what I love about this is that I think both of the parents there are concerned that mentioning what he does might be a red flag for him, but instead, as soon as he mentions that he talks to Charles Manson as a therapist, as a psychologist, he's like,
he's just interested.
Oh,
yeah.
He gets that Holden boner, He gets that. He's like, oh yes,
you got to speak to Manson. Oh, tell me more.
Yeah, so it's almost he's earning brownie points for giving him some juicy tidbits. I can understand
why they would be terrified of mentioning this, but it's not like he can lie, is it?
Yeah. Because he comes rushing in and he's like his tie's off. He's clearly just rushed from the airport because he landed at 6:30.
He missed the first plane.
Yeah. So yeah. But that happens. So and then the conversation with Tex is a lot more forthcoming. As Wendy points out after the fact, he's kind of just traded the belief in Manson for the belief in God. As much as it sounds like he's remorseful for all the things that he did and that he was an awful person, it does kind of sound like he's just traded one obsession with one leader, Manson, to religion, to Christianity, as a way of dealing with these things. Which, but it does mean that he's very candid about everything. How reliable it is debatable, but he's very candid about everything that he believes went on with Manson.
Yeah.
And says that he was so, off his head on drugs that, he could barely see people. It was just shapes, as he put it.
Bit of a blur.
But he did say, no, Manson, taught us to imagine killing people. He'd put a chair in the middle of the room and say, imagine what you do to this person and things like that. And essentially contradicts everything Manson said about, no, from the day I met him, he talked about this race war. We believed we had to ignite it so that the end of the world would come and, all that kind of thing.
And it was really interesting. He talks about how he did everything Manson asked. He went into the house, he stabbed all the people, and but he didn't go to the other places. Just that took too much energy. All that stabbing.
Yeah.
But it's like, there was supposed to be more.
Yeah, that was a really interesting little bit of the conversation when he said that if you ever stab someone, like if you stab people over and over again, sometimes you hit bone and it hurts and you have to be forceful, and like my hand
Yeah,
was in pain from all the stabbing, which is I don't think I've ever heard anyone describe stabbing like that from that perspective.
it makes sense.
Sure, yeah.
Like, but bone's pretty tough. Knives, don't get me wrong, they're tough, but they're gonna hit bone. They're gonna face some resistance. You're gonna get some, shock.
Yeah. Because most people, when they stab someone, don't do it 50 plus times, which again backs up his being on drugs argument. Because it sounds like they were all like kind of like out of it in a lot of ways.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
but what's interesting though is this idea that Wendy kind of puts together here with Holden, and Bill gets really upset by this notion. This idea that it almost escalated because like the ideas get into the subjects, into the children, if you will, the Manson family, and then because Manson felt like, oh, maybe because they've got this idea now, they might drift away from me. So he almost had to escalate it as if he was the one with the ideas to reestablish his dominance, because that was a recurring theme in the Manson interview, and like the whole sunglasses thing where he's given the sunglasses but then claims he stole them from the FBI to appear powerful, is that he had to maintain his leadership at all times. So it almost sounds like he's in a political sense, if you will, his hand was forced to put on a show of dominance, and that led to more murders and more violence than maybe what would have happened. Now, which doesn't give him a pass by any means, but it's this idea that there was like an escalation between two sides that escalated it to the point where the murders happened.
yeah, yeah. This idea that he didn't just go out and kill people. Like, it wasn't just a flippant remark. It was in his mind at least, a retaliation.
And the idea being that, of course, the people who did commit the murders are also. I mean, obviously, no one was saying they're not to blame because they did commit the murders, but the idea that they weren't just doing it at his behest. Like they inspired the idea in return as well, and it was a dance between multiple parties that got to the violence. And of course, Bell doesn't want to hear that because Bell wants to believe that someone can be coerced. That his son, perhaps, and his son is very young as well. I mean, it's worth mentioning his son is much younger than. I mean, these people we're saying kids, but they're all like college age.
Like 14, I think, was the youngest one when they started.
But a lot of them are like hitting 20 or whatever.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
they weren't like young kids. Whereas Bell's son's clearly like an age where if someone who's like twice his age, and twice his age only being maybe 18, to 20
Tops.
Yeah. Like
I don't think he's even. I would say he's probably 8 at the oldest.
Yeah, and if you're 8 and someone's 16, a 16-year-old. I mean, no, I think the older kids were that. I think the older kids in this case are maybe like 13, 14.
I agree. Yeah.
But you do what someone older says. You especially if it's someone it's not a stranger in this case, because they're not. They're people that he's been kind of hanging around with recently.
Yeah, they're kind of friends.
Yeah, kind of.
To him, they probably are.
Yeah, I don't know if they see it that way, the older kids, but
yeah, I'm sure he does.
Yeah. So no, and again, I mentioned this last episode. I like how they've been shaking up the interview format a little bit, because we got almost a traditional one with Kemper at first, because we got 3 interviews essentially in this episode. We got a traditional one with Kemper that felt like old times. We got one with Manson where it felt different because Manson talks the way he does, but also because Bill loses his temper.
Yeah.
And makes fun of his height and repeats over and over again, you convince people to kill 7 innocent people, and so on and so on. And then the third one, of course, it's just holding on himself, but of course it's a very different case where this is the first like truly apologetic person they've had. And again, we've talked about how he's just kind of traded one obsession for another, and it's just the obsession that's kind of inspiring him to be this apologetic. But it is still a very different dynamic too, because even Kemper, who is very friendly with him, still wanted to do what he did. He wasn't like
yeah, he did.
He's still obsessed with it. He's still.
Well, I think that was one of the most interesting questions to Tex. Was like, so if you'd never met Manson, do you think you would have killed people? And he's like, well, I'd hope not. I want to say no, but I can't be certain. I never know what would have happened, but I would have hoped I didn't.
Yeah, it's a very interesting answer.
It's interesting that he doesn't fully blame Manson. It's not 100%. It's his fault.
Which
partially because he was indoctrinated into a cult, I'm sure.
But, yeah. But I think that's what makes him feel like the more reliable of the two to listen. Even if some of his information is a bit skewed and he is obsessed with just a new, leader now, a new cult, if you will. Yeah. The way he's so candid and the way he doesn't necessarily just shift all the blame away, he still kind of blames himself. does make it easier to kind of listen to what he's saying and kind of take it a little bit more face value.
I think it's the element of remorse that none of the others have.
Yeah. But even just that right there, if he just blamed Manson, said, "Oh, I regret what I did, but I blame Manson for making me do it," like there still might be honesty in that, but it would be hard. But whereas because he's still taking some blame because he recognizes that he still went down that path. There's just it just feels more honest. It feels like
It does. It's interesting.
He's thought about it.
Whereas let's say Kemper, who's very aware of what he did. And I don't know if I'd go so far as to say he's proud of what he did anymore, but he doesn't seem to have remorse in the same way.
No. Well, Kemper's an interesting fish. I mean, that's
I'm just comparing, with the three that we've got this episode.
Yeah. So of course after this, I've got this party to go to at Gunn's, guy's big home, and bizarrely, he seems to want to try and pimp out Wendy immediately to this other dude, this other FBI
the guy who controls the money.
Which, I mean, we could maybe read into Gunn's intentions there with that. But
I mean, I think it's pretty forthcoming, to be honest, because it's immediately like, "Hey, Bill, you come with me. Wendy, why don't you stay and talk to this guy?"
Yes, unbuttons her shirt as well,
and pulls the zip down a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, not even enough to like show any cleavage or anything like that. It's a really small amount overall.
Yeah, it's still a line though.
No, it's over a line. It's enough to be uncomfortable. It's utterly unacceptable. What I'm saying though is, it's interesting that he didn't go any further. He, when he's already crossed that line, he didn't go and go, "All right, okay, we're going to put you on show." He's still putting the illusion of not being over the top, even though everyone in the scene knows he is.
Well, for me, the weird thing about it is, like, she's obviously just kind of shocked by what he's just done, and it's kind of, because I mean, even if someone did that to me, I'd be like, "What are you doing? Why are you touching my clothes? Yeah. Like, what's happening?" Because at that point, there's no context for it, because it's after he does this that the guy walks up, because you're like, "Wait, what was he doing?" And this guy's very, very, it comes on strong, I guess I'll put it that way, where he very quickly says, "Oh, we should go and talk somewhere alone. We could be having fun." Makes it very clear what he's talking about.
And she's like trying to get out of it, and nothing's happening, and then Holden walks in.
Holden,
look at that, and could you go get me another drink? Well, let's go. And I'm just gonna go to the toilet, and then it's like, "Oh no, I'll meet you over there."
Yeah, she escapes essentially and ends up with Bill. Bill is a hit with the other agents, all the higher ups, because he's making them all laugh. All these stories about the killers. Holden comes in though and starts sounding like a textbook, and they start walking away from the conversation almost immediately.
Yeah.
So Bill has to come out and rescue him a little bit later. But when they're outside, Bill does confide in Wendy what's going on with her son, with his son, sorry, and basically it says, "Don't tell Holden, keep it to yourself." But this is what I'm going through, and so they are starting to feel like the parents of Holden in a weird way. Like, yeah, we have to keep an eye on Holden, babysit him. Because even earlier on, actually, when he says that you may have to take the rest of the day off, she's understanding of it, but he doesn't really get into details. It's not until this scene in the car where he actually opens up.
I think Holden will probably find out when it has an impact on the work. When Bill makes a call that is clearly, we've already seen how he's trying to convince himself, "Oh, they were kids." When he makes a call that actively impacts something, that's when Wendy will say, "No, okay, I have to step in now."
Yeah, which reminds me, I have to go back to the start of the episode, because Bill gets called into Gunn's office and is being chewed out for not being informed. And Bill thinks he's talking about him going home for the day, and then finds out that it's actually about the fact that Holden got them kicked out of Atlanta. And Bill didn't even know this. So Bill then goes and gets mad at Holden and tells him off.
Well, I say, so before he does that, because he goes to Holden and, he chews him out kind of in front of the department, although not intentionally.
The door's shut, but he's shouting loud enough that everyone's hearing it.
Even before he knows what happened, he defends him to Gunn. He's like, "No, he said nothing that he shouldn't have said. Not really. He just, could have used a bit more tact."
Yeah, because when he goes to Holden, he's like, "Hey, but next time you give one of those theories, we make sure we've done the groundwork first. You don't open your mouth until then." But he does. I mean, that's the thing. But Bill will give Holden shit. He will fight him on stuff, but he ultimately always sticks up for him. Which again goes back to me saying that him and Wendy are kind of like his parents.
Absolutely,
in a weird way. Like they'll stick up for him until no end, but when they're alone with him, it's like, no, we need to talk about what you're doing. You can't act
Yeah.
like this. So really interested in that dynamic there, and of course we get him back to the Atlanta stuff at the very end of the episode when Holding gets a phone call from Jim saying there's been another strangulation, another kid, but 13 years old. And it's actually the end of the episode. We see because Manson, as they're leaving, Manson grabs his Helter Skelter book and gives him an autograph.
Well, no, yeah.
But we see at the end here when he opens the book to get his notepad that it says, "I'm ruining your world out there every day."
Yeah, it was something like that.
To that effect. And it goes back to what Manson was saying, where he's not to blame for all the bad things happening. It's everyone else raising their kids this way, and that world is there. But this little last note is like, no, my influence is helping. My influence is encouraging. Yeah. Like, so it's a really neat little ending to this episode because it felt like this episode is primarily about the fear that the entire like world is going to shit because people all over the place are becoming this, and Manson, not necessarily justifiably, but is kind of taking a little bit of credit and saying, "Hey, look at what I started. Look at."
Yeah, and well, I think somewhat justifiably in the sense that he had the media.
Oh,
He had,
sure.
that was his one thing, is influencing people.
Oh yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that after Manson, that the idea of serial killers was a lot more
Romanticized.
publicly known, and the idea of you could get fame from that. And just look at like any mass shooting these days, the idea that once it started happening, the idea that people thought they could get famous from doing it, they could make a statement, all of a sudden it started ramping up a little bit.
Yeah.
It gives other people the idea. And serial killing, kind of had a similar path.
It's happened for, centuries.
Oh sure, yeah, killing's always been happening. Like there's no
even like serial killing. We got like Jack the Ripper, right?
Oh sure, Ed Gein.
Right. Yeah. Like that's what I mean. This isn't a new phenomenon, but it is the media popularity of it definitely at least seemed to make it worse. Whether or not it actually is any worse, or if it's just people actually managed to connect the dots a bit more because we had people like this kind of figuring out,
well,
hey, these Atlanta murders are one person, not all individual cases.
Well, no, it's interesting. Like, has there been more serial killers since this time period, since the end of the '60s, start of the '70s, or did we just not know about the ones that were happening before?
Exactly.
Were they just hidden before?
Yeah.
There's interesting questions to be answered. Maybe some research that if anyone wants to do it and get back to us, by all means, I'd be curious to hear.
Yeah. I will say I forgot. Watching the show makes me want to go and research all the killers and stuff.
It does. It makes you want to go to a true crime hall and check things out.
I can for Manson specifically, I can remember You Must Remember This podcast.
Mm-hmm.
I think they've put it on a separate feed now for just the Manson section. Well worth checking out. It's very in depth and it's excellent.
Wendy did a couple of scenes as well outside of our discomfort at the sleazeball. Again, the idea that she's been made to feel this way at her work is because I don't even know she's gay yet. This is just inequality from being a woman. Never mind her.
They don't even realize. They're just like, hey, go put on some womanly charms and get us some money. Is Gunn's thing here.
Yeah, never mind her sexuality, which they don't know about. So, but she has another date with the bartender, and they're going to a movie. But Wendy's very high strung, wants to get in there before the trailers. I have to admit, I'm on Wendy's side with this. Yeah, I don't want to miss the trailers.
Well, no, I'm not. I don't want to miss the trailers, but I'm not bothered if I'm missing a couple of them. If I'm there, I'm there. If I'm missing the first 30 seconds of the movie, I'm furious. But if I miss the trailers, I'm disappointed, but it doesn't ruin the experience.
All right. But they end up just going back to her place to have sex, and afterwards they're talking. She sees a photo of her son because we heard that she had a kid last episode. And it's like, how often do you see him? Oh, yeah, I'm seeing him this weekend. I take him to take a baseball game. I'm glad Wendy asked for what sport it was because she said it was a Dukes game, I think. And
I was like, eh.
Yeah, who's that? It's like, it's the minor league. So I have never heard of a minor league team. So most of the major league teams I won't be able to tell you. So never mind.
I only know minor league exists as a concept by inferring that one must because there is major league.
There's a major league, yes.
Yeah, that's the only. I've literally never heard anyone ever mention the word minor league baseball. It's just from assumption that there is one because there is major league that I go, well, there must be.
Yeah, and Wendy once again kind of puts her foot in a lot. She almost invites herself to come to this weekend thing, and she has to be like, no, 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 I don't want them to meet like girlfriends or whatever until it's like a
Yeah.
permanent thing. And Wendy kind of like goes, oh, that makes sense, yeah, because often like having like this promiscuous lifestyle will lead to like psychological trauma.
No, not the promiscuous. Ah, shit.
She basically almost said he might become a serial killer if that behavior is shown to him too much.
Yeah, I don't think she quite the bad hand quite picked up on that. She was more just like,
Sure.
oh, promiscuous, eh?
Yeah, but I think that's the way she was definitely thinking from her scientific perspective.
She was, yeah, definitely.
And they kind of like make up by the end because like, oh, best sex you ever had, you say, and then they're clearly going to go at it again. But like, it's just another sign of like Wendy struggling with people. It's almost a little Holden-esque in the sense that like she doesn't get awkward in the same way that Holden does, but she does struggle to relate to humans on a regular social level,
or at least people like that where they're so different, right?
Sure. Like
Because
she's fine in a professional capacity where it's just the work, and she also has to talk about the work.
Yeah, on a personal level, I mean, she's not terrible.
No, she's not the worst.
She's not Holden bad.
Not Holden bad.
No, but could room for improvement.
Oh, that reminds me. When Wendy's telling Bill that her and Greg went to do the interview last episode at the start, and she's like,
"Did he shit his pants?"
Yeah, that's basically what he asked, and it was just really funny. It was like, yep. So, oh, I can't wait to read that transcript.
Yeah, we should mention is what Wendy is kind of point out. Going, do you know what? You might have been right. The questions don't work the way I thought they did.
It's funny how she does it once herself and realizes, this doesn't work. Like, you have to go with the flow and sort of
you have to give them what they want to open them up. You can't just be rigid.
You have to call an audible. You have to basically just go with the flow of where the conversation is going and open up in a way that they'll appreciate.
Yeah, there's an interesting vulnerability that all of them have to give something personal to get back from these killers to show that they're kind of on the same level and they mean it.
Which I think that emulates the whole idea of even investigating these types of crimes, is that you're sort of giving up a little part of your humanity to even explore this stuff, because you have to, by filling their lives with this, they are essentially being a part of that world. They don't get to be ignorant like the rest of the world is. They don't get to live happy, peaceful lives.
That in the personal, like Wendy here, kind of going, oh well, what about your son there?
It could be a serial killer.
Bill obviously looking at his son, going, oh, is he going to be a killer?
And
right?
Holden's getting panic attacks because he's given up too much of his life. He got too close to
exactly. Yeah.
So, and I think that's the idea, but they have to be able to do that a little bit in interviews to actually get somewhere.
Otherwise, just nothing happens.
And of course, with Manson's someone who can take advantage of that if because he's smart enough. So, very, very.
That's why I think we will get more Manson, because while there was definitely personal stuff for Bill here, Holden coped admirably.
Yeah.
And I think given that Manson was always his target, his fish to catch, I think there needs to be a round two.
Sure. Yeah. But no, obviously a packed episode. It was a bit longer, clocking in at about 70 minutes.
Yeah. Still great.
Yeah, no, solid stuff this season. This season could end up being better than the first if it continues its path.
It could, yeah. And we're probably going back to Atlanta now after the other murder. I would assume so, given that that's where we end this one.
Yeah, possibly. It depends. Maybe if there's more legal, political issues, maybe they'll be held back for a while, and that'll be frustrating.
Perhaps, but it feels like this back half of the season, that's the focus that we're going to be dealing with overall. I think there's the through line thread here.
Yeah, because we're not catching BTK this season. We're going to be catching this Atlanta killer if we're catching anyone.
Yeah.
So, and that was the other thing I liked actually about the Kemper interview, is when they bring, when he's like, oh, there's someone you've not caught, and he starts naming some names of like people, and they're like, no. And he's like, oh, it's someone, you've found someone who's not in the press yet. This is someone that I have not heard about.
And he's like, oh, interesting.
If you tell me some stuff, maybe I can help. And like, no, we can't discuss it ongoing. And I think Holden wants to. Holden's sitting there, he's like, oh, I want to tell him everything.
It is, yeah. But it's only a matter of time till it hits the press, and then he won't have as much information as them, do it wrong, but he'll have enough to maybe give them some more.
Yeah, we'll get Holden on the phone. Hey, buddy, I've had some thoughts about this BTK guy, and why does he sound like a sandwich at Subway? we'll discover that. We'll figure that all out together. You and me. You and me, Holden. uh, Also, I am so using the Holden boner phrase again at some point. That is now what getting excited about a serial killer opening up is. It's the Holden boner.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was episode 5 of Mindhunter season 2. So by all means, let us know what you thought of the episode. Point out the little things that we might have missed during the course and all that sort of stuff. You can like and subscribe, and you can get us on the Twitters at mail_fuzz for channel updates. If you want to support the channel and everything we do here and keep all the content coming, you can go over to patreon.com/mailfuzztv and support us for as little as $1 per month, and that gets you access to some exclusive stuff, some early stuff, but mainly just keeps everything coming and keeps us supported. Otherwise, check out other TV shows and other stuff we do on the channel, on the various podcast feeds. We're reviewing other TV shows. We got some movie podcasts as well. Obviously, I've been mentioning TV shows at the end of all these Mindhunter reviews. I'll divert a little bit this one and say we have a couple of movie podcasts you might want to check out. We have a horror movie podcast called Screams After Midnight, which focuses on a horror film every week, and we have a sci-fi movie podcast called The Ace, The Atomic Cinema Experiment, which focuses on a sci-fi movie every week, which is pretty self-explanatory. But notably, because we are getting a little bit closer to October, Screams After Midnight has something of a special month, which we call the Octoberthon, where we pump out an episode almost every day, if not every day, in the month of October. It's something of a marathon month. So if that sounds intriguing, and if you're into serial killers, maybe it is. So yeah, so thank you very much for watching once again. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV, guys. Have you got any vanilla?